Welcome to the survival playbook for sports tech companies. Some market research over four key companies that we are going to learn a lesson through their business journey. And three specific lessons will peel back and identify three challenges for mergers and acquisitions that they will experience all. So the ruthless data war that we're seeing isn't really in Silicon Valley. It's more in the field of football, like you see out there today, where you're seeing RF trackers and shoulder pads. You're seeing neural networks via tablets where coaches are grabbing data through a camera or GPS and trying to understand the game live and trying to reframe strategies live. And that ecosystem has generated over 200 billion to date. And sport tech space right now is really faster, but it's also a harsh proving ground for almost any market that you're going to be entering today. There's many new challenges, and that's why I think we're seeing more merger and acquisition because people prefer to buy than build. But we'll talk about making it your own and integration as the moat later in this presentation. So there's three common denominators that we're going to observe from this survival playbook that I've observed in the markets. The successful companies have survived this arena by having three unique gates: the durability of the product, the friction of the product, the friction of the data. uh, if it's not consistent and not always available, then you never earn the trust of the organization and you don't get market adoption. And there's many product examples, good and bad. Then the brutal budget structure. One that comes to mind is right now the reduction in budgets in high school space and the NIL impact that it has in Gate 2 and Gate 3. A discussion here is Gate 2 really, again, you have to account for privacy, which implements typically some name and likeness requirements. Most organizations have the athletes sign a waiver because they're using this data and then they decide to either eliminate it or are using this data for recruitment purposes. And we'll talk about that as well. So really, the obstacle is not in having data, it's in how it's being filtered, how they are being managed through either the budget that they have, the durability that they have, and then meeting the privacy demands that we see. So survival of all three, and you can be dominant in this sector and how you're competing in the market space. So the presentation will cover largely some of these uh, big companies here, and we'll talk about some of the big mergers and acquisitions. Garmin, the consumer scale king for them, their biggest merger and acquisition really is in the uh, team sports, training peaks, training heroic solution, trying to now provide a little bit more of a solution also in the wellness space. They've acquired First Beat Analytics some time ago, and all their watches now implement it. Their gap is there's no centralized platform. So, and there's no it's all really individual athlete tools that are silo and based. So team sports doesn't really provide a solution. I don't know what Training Peaks and Training Heroic, how the integration process is going out now. We need to come back to you and do a review again. Catapult really is the best example. They're a pro first SaaS powerhouse, really. They provide the GPS unit with the service. They own the elite workflow space. So if you're looking at soccer data, they really own that space along with football. But it has weak gym to field integration right now, and they were addressing that. In 2025, they made a merger and acquisition of Perch to catch that squat rack data but it's still clunky. And right now, it's still just a simple integration process that's behind one shared login right now. Hudl is really unique in that they are all in one sector, being the high school space. They are a grassroots solution to own amateur video for end-to-end breakdown, for recruiting purposes, for fundraising. They really own the complete digital twin of the amateur program. They still need to fulfill a little bit more on the biometric side. Vald is really focused on being the diagnostic king. It owns the biomechanics space. And what's effectively differentiates them from the other peers here is their norm engine is their moat. So everyone is conspicuous, is really absent from each other's turf. So what we want to do is, how does this impact, at the end of the day, the money and the arms race that we're seeing in the sports tech space, and what's the lesson that we're going to learn? Here we see that the big shift really that we're learning is they're shifting away from selling hardware to owning the hub. So one-time device sale uh, with um, with high margins on SaaS. That's really the focus, is to be that data hub, and that's really the next pivot. So Catapult, by example, with merger acquisition, really they're designed to look at this full stack by looking at video analysis software solution that they've integrated since 2016, now all the way to 2025. It's currently evaluated at 235 million in favor for Catapult right now, but I still to be determined if the company is buying it's instead of uh, easily truly integrating a software. So timeline will show what they bought, how it impacts their P&L. It's still too early to show, but they have the most history in this space right now. So really all eyes on how they are able to navigate the merger and acquisition space. Uh, the other story here is the revenue that is generated for them. 96 million from 2023, and it's 115 million LTM gross margin. To today, you're looking at an institutional growth of about 80% net profit, which is still negative. The, the SaaS lift, though, pushes EBITDA margins to a record 18%. And that's really, I think, the investor reward. We're looking at a 19% stock jump despite the losses. It's $91 million deal for these proprietary, metrics, um, offer a 10 billion transfer to the market. So their moat currently is GPS, video, weight room data into one scouting solution. So that's their hub. Um, we need to see how this is all going to shake out, but I think they are the most detailed solution right now to date. But point is that no vendor that I brought up here has a full stack. So there's a big gap. And how can we service that is that we have 5 lessons. So lesson 1 really is I got to transcend that hardware. And transcending that hardware basically means we need to become conscious of our building costs and have contingency plans, because the hardware market has become a commodity, and meaning that you can develop overseas and you're going to be competing against cheaper margin dollars uh, that still is true to an extent. In the short term, there's going to be a lot of quality control issues. As an example, if you're switching to development in China, after that, once you've stabilized those quality controls, those QC issues, you'll be able to then create better margin dollars for yourself in the long term. Catapult is a good example of that because they are agnostic to heart rate, and their device, they use devices as additional systems that feed forward into their hub. The result is the platform becomes a better operating system for coaches, medical staff, and scouting staff. So they're really locked into these three departments of workflow, and now tossing really the vest technology that they've just launched as well, along with Perch, I think is a solid platform product. Their deepest moat, though, will be in the data and what's underneath it and how well they're able to integrate the predictability value from field to chip. So the second lesson here that we see is building the data moat uh, that you grow, that's yours. So throughout this force experiment that we're seeing in the space, Vald is a good example. Force plates are 15% more accurate now and 30% cheaper. So there's a loss in that commodity market. So, but what the customer is buying is context. So and not newtons. So not the laws of physics here. Vald offers that through norms engines that they've benchmarked one athlete against millions of tests. Garmin does that with their consumable wearable via first beat analytics and their health API. And the story here to be told is it's that Waze analogy effect. We're trying to really make this space more livelier and integrated. So their fortress to them is don't attack anyone head on, but really stay within your uh, your wheelhouse. In that case, it's diagnostics for them. Attack those white spaces. How do we do it? You create a better product that fights and in those spaces. The first gap I would say would be in a high school vacuum space. Um, Catapult is a high price item, so what's the alternative to teams right now? They're offering several different solutions to be able to grab that, and it's very fragmented right now. Because you have redundancies. Certain schools will buy Catapult and Vald, or buy Hudl and Catapult, and they both do recruitment solutions. So it's a little conflicting. Then how do you integrate the fragmented gym to field solution? Uh, Having an API layer is essential, and most organizations now will be open to integrating because they want to keep your business. Democratize biomechanics. Uh, this is where now we're seeing innovation, or we're seeing optical cameras being a solution, motion sensors being a solution, and the accuracy has improved in those devices, and the cost has also been reduced. And a good example is a competitor that's not listed here, but OVR is a simple to use, very cost effective lean model that fights on this pricing tier. And interoperability right now is slightly being ignored, but that transition eventually, once it's in place, it'll start bringing challenges to these larger companies. And these larger companies, the way that they've solved it to date is through merger and acquisition. So the thesis really needs ongoing. So I invite you to continue this thesis with me, and the hypothesis being those three learning lessons, and how do we then address the weakness from those those three lessons that we want to learn from. The diagnostic bridge really is what I alluded to before through an API. So it's software and hardware only. So we're merging consumer data as well and clinical diagnostic changes. So you're seeing Quest enter this space where athletic trainers want to be able to see that and sports medicine doctors want to see that. So API integration is massive. And if you look at where this kind of impacts or some of the wearables, Whoop comes to mind where they were warned by the FDA in July 2025 about their blood pressure insights. Then a year later, they were allowed to use that metric. The lesson here is to be careful in how you're labeling your UI and understand and have some disclaimers. But the tools are powerful enough to be able to measure somewhat accurately if it's done correctly in the right context, in the right specs and are understood. And I think operators understand that. And some of these organizations are aware of it and are actually regulating that hidden cost for the end customer. But the area where this kind of all falls apart is the data ownership as well as how it's applied in a platform. Because data for data's sake is not going to provide a solution. So the other weakness here is integration depth, and API is just the road between the cities. It doesn't mean the cargo is going to be usable. So the database, if it's mismatched and it turns out that the sports scientist has to still translate this, it's not going to be a happy outcome. And right now, does the weight room data from Perch natively feed the GPS dashboard, or is it a CSV dump at 6 a.m.? And those are the struggles of integration and of acquisition. And then Hudl, and another example is their native computer vision platform. Is it an export or a re-import? And that's another friction point. So that integration is really the struggle. That's the problem. The barrier is it's a barrier that's next really barrier for a coach or a practitioner that's limited for time, and then that creates the critique to the vendor. Their claim versus reality, and if it continues being a bad story, that usually will eliminate the vendor's success in the market space. High school market, how do you get in there? And I think it's going to be in the prescriptive automation. So this is where the final lesson or weakness learned out of the lessons explained before. Um, it's the price of the dashboard is not the issue. It's the price of the human time. The coach really is uh, often not a sports scientist or a data analyst in a high school level. So something that's simple, something that is explained to them that allows them, the coach, to be able to scan or have, or the staff have further understanding and maybe rule out any other issues. And the example I like to talk about is the industrial fatigue model, as well as what you're seeing in already the space with trim scoring. But these solutions really talk to um, what we can push and what we can not push. And that industrial model really shows that motor learning solution, and that shifts the descriptive visualization, what happened, to the what to do now. So Hudl Signal AI assistant is that example in this space for coaches right now. So that's the lesson that we're learning from this. The score and the acquisition of integration really is the challenge. So if we look at this, Open API is, like I said, the challenge in this space. So what we want to see is follow the money. So if we follow the money and we see the challenges that are going right now, apologize here. we need to be able to, uh, the term skate where the puck is going. I think the industry is shifting. So if we're shifting the reactive measurements to predictability and preventative intelligence, um, we have to, we have to reframe what we're watching. We have to reframe the stopwatch to health platform to Aura's predicted breakdown, not just steps. So it is an example, what does that data mean and why are we tracking it? And then stadiums infrastructure present a radio frequency solution problem. So there's the LoRa network, there's a 5G network. How do we take advantage of that, and how do we take advantage of AI analysis with live stats, instant highlights, and being able to unlock plays and build a low latency future in that live environment. So to predict the future is really where the future lies. So I think that's one of the lessons that of the five that I mentioned that we have. We reviewed three. This is the fourth one. You know, it, lesson five is real simple. I'll share with you ahead of time. It's the exit, and eventually that's the goal of a lot of these companies. And that's where we're seeing the acquisition of some of these companies. They are part of this big picture. They are part of the hub. So if you can't outspend these giants, you're building to be acquired. So that is where we're seeing the market signal. We're seeing deal structures change. We're seeing multiple stay elevated, specifically around unique niche companies that are being built to be acquired. So if we're looking at the ACV math, we're looking at how does that justify the lift? So if you pour capital into one deep patentable niche, an audience of one, is that really going to move the needle? Um, uh, or is it likely a 85% of a hamstring tear that you see with pre-kickoff? So every one of these plays that niche companies are running on human data, it's a minefield. So we don't know if it's going to work necessarily, and that's where the challenge is for a lot of these companies. Uh, we've alluded what these minefields are. Some of the challenges is in state law. So some of these, like the Illinois BIPA law, it's really the right for action. So it's drilling down a class action suit settlement for data acquisitioning. This is really creating a lot of problems if you're going to operate and collect data. And then it also presents data for courtroom evidence. And we've seen this in the industrial space as well as the military space. So founders have to face a choice to define whether they survive and how they position their brand and their company. The founder's dilemma really is in this gray area, and we have to build privacy first to sustain. So there's a couple of different options. Option A, option B here that we see: move fast, harvest everything, bury consent. And option B is privacy first, explicit opt-in, encryption, user controlled, and deletion from day one. Option B, I think, is the payoff is yes, marginally slower growth, but there's sustainability and it fulfills the GDPR rules. So the payoff is the slower in year one, the compliance mode in year five. That's the takeaway from the founder's dilemma here. If they have the runway to do it, it's ideal. I'm not saying to move fast and harvest everything. You could encourage a unique model and include a solution for the athlete where they could monetize their data. And that's another option that's not just here, but it is popped up on the market research that we've seen. So 5 moves to build your acquisition environment. Transcend the hardware. The device is just a gateway. Your SaaS is your operating system. That's where you're going to make most of your margin. But you need to get engagement, and you need to be able to address the churn rates. So the second move is, what's your data moat? And that really is something that's fast and outgrowing the space right now with the cost to operate with the AI tech stack. How are you attacking the white space, the blue ocean that we can compete in? And then the how do you skate to the new frontier? Where's that puck going? And we talked about the reactive documents, the predictive and preventative AI, and then how do we build it finally to be acquired? So if you're a sports tech company, listen to this. What's that high value niche that provides a lift to your ACV? So that value point. So how to win? So yeah, and ask yourself whether you should, because this has really been perfected by certain companies that have niched themselves and have had some generated billions and handed over really a unique playbook each company. So if you turn these companies as as a representation of what an ideal company looks like, none of them look, first of all, like they're servicing the whole industry. And the solution or the common denominator is creating a digital twin of that athlete in some capacity. So what's going to really be the future is looking at sleep architecture, looking at other diagnostic tools like sweat chemistry, neurological stress, other heartbeat solutions, layering data. So when does really more data help optimize performance? It's really when you commercialize that human existence. And I think the future will be in some type of blockchain along with athlete incentive built in, because the goal here is to solve for better return to play, better return to life, better performance, optimization. So the real question is, again, who owns the data and where should we be then going with this data? So who ultimately owns it? I think you can get a win-win, but that's still to be explored. So I hope this review and this little survival guideline for any of the sports tech companies is helpful. And I look forward to connecting with anyone. If you want to do a lean business canvas, or if you want to take a look at your company scorecard results, I invite you to go to bioinsights.tech and take me up on a scorecard or a lean canvas model and review what your business looks like, and we'll give you a quick scope of work to show you where we can help you the most. So thanks again for giving us a listen, and I look forward to sharing our next presentation with the group.